Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories. I'm Laura Schara, your host for today. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be talking about trout fishing this afternoon. And before we get there, I want to give our sponsors a big thank you. First, Voyager Saunas. Nice welcome to Minnesota Bound podcast. Also, Connecticut, Minnesota DNR, Minnesota Propane, and Oreo and Ritz. I'm very excited for today's guest. In fact, I just spent an afternoon with her a couple weeks ago, and we did some trout fishing in southeastern Minnesota. And I would like to welcome Monta Hayner to the Minnesota Bound podcast. She is a guide with the Driftless Fly Fishing Company in Preston, Minnesota. Monta, welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast.
Hi, Laura. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, it's so fun to chat with you on the podcast because we had a wonderful day down by the Root River doing some trout fishing and fly fishing. And you have been a guide with Driftless Fly Fishing Company since 2015. Is that correct?
Actually, I trained in 2 years ago. So I've been guiding for 3 years.
Well,
yeah.
You know
but
what?
I've been,
in your bio, it says 2015.
Oh, that's funny. I've been teaching since 2015.
Oh, teaching since 2015.
Yeah, I've been teaching through some nonprofit organizations.
Oh, awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And your brother is the owner of Driftless Fly Fishing Company.
He is. Yeah.
Awesome. And I have to say that your fly fishing shop and your guiding company is Orvis-Endorsed. And that's pretty cool. What does that mean to be Orvis-Endorsed?
Actually, I don't know all the details, but it's a network of quality fly shops throughout the country. I don't remember all the details of what it took for my brother to get endorsed. I know he took somebody from the company fishing, and they came and saw the shop. But they look for quality instructors and quality shops, and that's how they endorse. But they actually come out and check out the company.
Very cool. Yeah, when you get the Orvis stamp of approval, that means you're really serious about what you do. And, part of what makes your company successful, of course, is the area in which you're fishing. And, southeastern Minnesota has some amazing trout streams, and it's really known as the Driftless Area. And
yes.
Can you kind of just explain the topography down there that makes it so special for trout fishing?
So the Driftless Area is a geological term, and it encompasses Minnesota, Wisconsin, northeast Iowa, and a little bit of Illinois. And it's an area of the country where the glaciers did not flatten the earth. And so the glaciers got right up to it, and then when they melted, the melting went through the limestone and created underground caverns and springs. And so that area has this cold water that the trout need, that is spring fed. So it may be really dry out, but the springs continue to feed the streams. And so they stay cold even when it gets really warm.
And they're also, obviously it's very clear, clean water.
Yeah.
And, that's really important to really healthy trout fishing, is it not?
Yes, it is. And it's the earth that's filtering that water, which is a wonderful, natural system.
Yes. No kidding. And we have to do our part to keep those rivers clean, of course. Yep. And the specific river that you take a lot of your guests fishing is the Root River. And that was named one of the top trout streams in the U.S.
Yes, it is. And it's sort of this undiscovered area in the country for fishing. And I'm afraid it's recently been discovered. So there's a lot more anglers out there.
I bet. And, how long is the Root River? Are there, certain areas that are better than others?
I actually don't know how long it is. It starts up in Forestville. Well, that's the south branch, starts in Forestville. The main branch starts above Chatfield, maybe all the way over to Spring Valley. And then it goes all the way to the Mississippi. The south branch is a really good stream for fishing. The main branch gets a little warm, but it carries smallmouth bass, who also require clean water. And many, if not all, of the upper tributaries carry trout. They are, clean as they come in. And the trout require really clean, cold water.
And, typically, are you fishing for brook trout in these areas, or are there brown trout as well?
So mostly there's brown trout. Many of the upper reaches of the smaller tributaries have the native brook trout. They started doing genetic testing and found out that they were all native. The brown trout have been introduced, but they're self-reproducing. And then the DNR does put rainbow trout in certain places, just in general to help people learn, give them more access to fish.
And speaking of access to fish, if someone's kind of new to fly fishing, your guide service actually is suited for non-experienced all the way to the very experienced. Can you kind of give a example, like a day on the water? What is that like when you go out with your company?
Well, we start at 9:00, and we have all the equipment we need to loan out if you need to borrow equipment, if you don't have your own equipment, which means, trying on waders, getting the right shoes. We usually bring several rods so that if you get tangled, we can just pass you another rod that has a fly ready, or if the fly should change, we can, hand you a dry fly if they start emerging, and then switch out. It includes lunch, and we usually take a break midday to take a rest along the stream and have a good lunch. We also carry snacks. So it depends on what you want to learn, and it's really good to talk to your guide, any guide, not just our company, and let them know what you want to learn if you have ideas of what you want to learn. So if you're a beginner, do you want them to do everything? Do you want to learn how to do some of it yourself? If you're a beginner, you learn to cast to begin with, learn where the fish are and how to find them. And what's wonderful about guiding is that you get one-on-one teaching or one-on-two teaching. It's that sort of close teaching as you go fishing. And the guides know, what waters are good right then. Having been out scouting or fishing recently, so sometimes we get rainstorms through that muddy up some of the water, and we know where to go to find clearer water. The fish tend not to bite, not to eat when it's too muddy. They back off and hold up and get out of the way of the mud. And so that's one of the expertise of a guide. Along with, even if you're experienced, we can work on your casting skills. Having experience with casting, and, I just sent a friend down to fish, and I said, ask to try different rods. He doesn't have a rod yet. And so I wanted him to try the variety during the day when he's out fishing to decide what matches his casting. And so there's, things like that we do as guides. And then the all-day guiding is 9 a.m. until usually till you're tired, but we can go into the evening. Sometimes there's evening hatches. So that's, why it's good to take a break. It's also good as a guide to know whether the person has evening plans, to know when we need to end it and get back.
Yeah. And this part of Minnesota for trout fishing, I have to say, is such a beautiful part of the state with a lot of limestone bluffs and beautiful scenery while you're fishing. And
yeah.
Fly fishing is really known for, you see it in the movies, and of course it always has the most beautiful background to it.
Yes.
And, southeastern Minnesota does not disappoint as far as, the beauty that surrounds you while you're fly fishing.
Yeah, most of the streams have these beautiful limestone cliffs. There's some in particular that, like, I took a picture of a friend of mine on one of the streams that ended up on the front of the Minnesota TU magazine. And it was her with a blue hat in front of this huge limestone cliff.
And yeah, I saw that photo. You actually showed that to me at the flash shop, and that was incredible. And even, the day we spent in front of those limestone, it seems like a mini cliff, if you will.
Yeah.
So pretty. And the water was so clear. And, one thing that I was, a learning lesson, even for me, I've done some fly fishing, but not, as much as I would like per se, is the trout, you really have to stalk the trout because if that
Yes.
water is clear and you have a sunny day, they
Yep.
see you coming.
Yep. And there's ways to sort of hide from that. You always approach from the bottom because they look upstream when they're feeding. I like to shoot for riffles because it hides. You don't have the glassy water where every little thing of your cast lands and shakes the water and scares them. So if you cast up into a riffle, the water's already moving and kind of hiding your cast, and it really helps. I've heard it described as trying to sneak up on a bird is what it's like to fish for trout.
That's a very good analogy because I would agree with that. And I definitely needed a lot of riffle help the day we were fly fishing. And, it does take a lot of casting practice and lessons. And speaking of, before we get to the conversation about casting and some of the requirements of being a good fly fisherman or fly fishing angler, I'll say, I want to thank our newest sponsor, Voyager Saunas.
So it's time to welcome our newest sponsor to the Minnesota Bound podcast. No doubt the world has been a crazy place lately. Busy work schedules, kids, coaching, travel. It all sometimes feels just too much. But you know what? I found my way to take some time and truly get away. I do it with our new Voyager sauna. Voyager builds custom saunas for your home, backyard, and business, and they are the only company building premier mobile units. They're on wheels. They are units that go anywhere you go. It's the pick of the Shirk family. Clear grade cedar benches, spray foam insulation, Kuma wood-fired stoves, or Hilo electric heaters. Finish influenced hand-built saunas that will last a lifetime. Constructed with care by the Hometown Voyagers team. My wife and boys, believe me, they love our new mobile sauna. Voyager, a Minnesota movement influenced by Finnish culture. Visit voyagerssaunas.com and get ready to distress. Trust me, it works.
I also want to give a thank you to Connecticut Water. I have been a Connecticut water drinker for, my goodness, it has to be at least 10 years now. I have the drinking system in my kitchen, and I love it. Not only does it get rid of all the contaminants in the water, and including chlorine and things like that, but it also really tastes great. And I am a big health advocate, and one of my goals every single day is to drink a lot of water, including I try to get to a gallon every single day. Doesn't always happen, but Connecticut Water, of course, makes it easier to get there because it tastes great. So for more information on Connecticut Water and the drinking systems, you can go to connecticut.com to find a dealer near you. Do you know what it really costs to heat your water at your home, cabin, or business? No? Well, guess what? We do. Based on data from the U.S. Department of Energy, the average annual saving for homes that heat their water with propane rather than electricity is $175. You can save energy and get 2.5 times as much hot water compared to your average electric water heater. Let's save energy and money with cleaner, greener fuel. Propane, the right energy right now. All right, Monta, let's talk a little bit about fly fishing and specifically casting. And, you had mentioned when we were out fishing on the Root River that, there's an intimidation factor with fly fishing, and part of your mission is to kind of reduce that intimidation factor, that it doesn't need to be, I guess intimidating is the word. And how do I do this? And am I going to be frustrated and stuck in the trees all the time? And do I need a lot of gear to do it? Can you, talk to us about that? It doesn't need to be as intimidating as it seems sometimes to get into fly fishing.
Right. I've made lists of sort of the bare necessities, and you do need a fly rod and fly line and a reel and a few flies, but you can wait to get waders. You can wet wade in the summer. And you don't really need waders unless you're going to do it in the spring or fall when it gets colder to stay dry. And I think part of the intimidation is how a fly line is cast and understanding the mechanics of it, because it's really physics. You don't have a weight at the end pulling your line out like you do in spin fishing. The line itself is weighted, and you have to get momentum, and then you have to make it stop so it'll roll out properly. and not land in a pile. And a lot more people are learning by watching videos. But I do want to say that if anybody wants to try it, we teach these beginning 101 classes for free at the shop. And we do it about every 2 weeks. And so you can just call up the Driftless Fly Fishing Company and get signed up. And it's from 9 a.m. It's supposed to go to 11. We tend to go a little bit over because we go down on the water as well, because we're right there on the South Branch of the Root River.
Which is fantastic, to be able to offer free classes for fly fishing, and especially from, learning from experts such as yourself and your team that you have at, Driftless Fly Fishing Company is really a unique experience. And what also is, wonderful about those classes and that you have a chance to hit the water is the streams are very approachable. And granted, you've got a lot of trees around those, so it's not super open, but it's easy to kind of wade into the water. Again, if you don't have waders on, if you just have even if you don't care if your sneakers get wet, you can step right in. It's not really deep water. The water isn't moving super fast. So if you're, again, a beginner, if you have kids, if you're worried about anything like that, it's a great chance to learn. And just like anything else, fly fishing takes, as we have chatted about, a lot of patience. There's no doubt you're going to get snagged in a tree, as I did.
Or tangled lines that you have to untangle.
Exactly, which I found out Monta has a passion for untangling lines, which is amazing. So you have a lot of patience.
Well, it's a puzzle. I see it as a puzzle.
It's your version of a Rubik's Cube, I think, is getting lines untangled. But do you think it takes a lot of practice to really be successful at fly fishing? What is the learning curve there?
I think it does take practice. Some people come a little more naturally to it. And I do find that if people have done some spin casting, they still want to cast it like that, and they have to overcome that and relearn, because they're still holding, the rod in their hand. So they have to unlearn that and relearn this in order to, because it's a different technique in terms of how you move the rod. And so often they'll still try to cast that weight out at as they go out over the river. So that's kind of where practice comes, but you don't have to be a great caster to fish. You can get it out there, and it's more about getting a drift of so it looks like a natural bug in the water. So if you can get a natural drift and a long enough drift, then you can catch fish. So you can start catching without being a great caster, which is kind of interesting. But the more you practice, the better caster you get, and then you can catch fish in more difficult situations.
And how do you recommend? You had a really obviously great technique on figuring out what the fish are eating at that moment in time, because of course your fly choices are endless when you go into a fly shop, and probably could, obviously you want to ask if you're at the guide shop, you want to buy flies, you want to ask what, the fish are biting at that moment. But there's also a way when you actually get right to the stream or the river, you can kind of figure out what type of fly you should have on the end of your line.
Right. So what we're using primarily are aquatic insects that are there. And so when you approach a stream, I watch for flying insects. I watch to see if fish are rising, but I also pick up rocks in the river to look at what is on those rocks. And so you can see the mayfly nymphs or the caddis nymphs or scuds. I was in whitewater and we were seeing more scuds than I usually see, which was nice. And even if you don't know the name of the insects, if you have a supply of sort of like the basics of what's in the area, you can open your fly box and just compare and pick something that looks very much like what you're seeing and try that. And then if you're not getting a bite on it, you might change the depth of how you're using it if you're using it underwater. And then if you're still not, then you might want to change to a different fly and look, do that same process over again. So before you have to learn all the names of those flies, there's ways of figuring it out.
Ahead of time, yes. And, there are certain areas of course, the Driftless area that you have some, spots that you would love to fish at that you're willing to share with our listeners. Of course, many times people aren't willing to share the exact, what they call honey holes of any fishing spot.
Yeah.
So we understand that, Monta. Everybody's kind of secret. They're very secret spots. Before we get to Monta's favorite fishing spots in southeastern Minnesota, did you know that Minnesota's wildlife management areas are a vast array of lands across all of Minnesota? These 1,440 wildlife management areas are valued for wildlife and Minnesota's outdoor recreation opportunities. Annually, the DNR maintains hunter walking trails, plants food plots for wildlife, and develops acres and acres of prairie and grasslands. To find out more about Minnesota's wildlife management areas, go to mndnr.gov/WMAS.
Today is a day for adventure. Cub has all the Nabisco snacks you need to make sure adventure is delicious from start to finish. Life just tastes sweeter when you share Oreo cookies on the trail, when you crunch Ritz crackers at the campsite, or rock the boat with Ritz cheese crispers. Stop at Cub on the way to your adventure. The great outdoors is calling. Don't forget your snacks.
All right, Monta, speaking of Minnesota DNR and all the great spots that are available for trout fishing, and before you give up your favorite spots for trout fishing, the Minnesota DNR actually came out with their 2021 map book for trout angling opportunities in southern and central Minnesota, which is pretty cool. And, for those of you who are kind of somewhat new to trout fishing or looking for new areas, this book is amazing. And they actually have not only all the trout streams and trout regulations and things like that, but they have it marked on the maps where there are fishing easements. And I thought this was so cool that the DNR has worked with landowners that are willing to allow fishing on their private property. And that's where we were when we were fishing, right?
Yep, we were on an easement.
And the easements, they work with these landowners, which allow you to go fishing on their property. But of course, the only thing you can do on their property is fishing.
Correct.
Is that right? Yes.
Yep. I've seen ramps. I've seen watercress. Can't pick it. I can only fish.
Exactly. As much as you're looking at those ramps, being like, those would be really tasty tonight. Cannot do it. So I highly recommend, picking up a copy of this book. I believe they are free copies. Is that, I'm not sure.
Correct.
That's the free copies for you, and to know about all the trout regulations and places you can fish, and of course where all those easements are at, because those are really special spots, I think.
Yes.
And speaking of special spots, do you have any locations within Preston, Minnesota, or actually anywhere, I guess, in Minnesota that are some of your favorite places for trout fishing, since you're so passionate about fly fishing?
Well, I do actually. I love to fish in there's 4 main towns. So in Lanesboro and in Preston and Chatfield. In Chatfield, it's on Mill Creek, not on the main branch of the Whitewater. But in Preston, it's the South Branch all the way through town. Spring Valley. I actually haven't fished Spring Valley, but that's another town. And I tend to fish those in the winter. They have year-round catch and release. In the summer, you can catch and keep, but in the winter, you can catch and release. And then there's 3 state parks that have trout streams, and they're Forestville and Whitewater, which I was just at this weekend, and Beaver Creek. So some of my other favorite spots, I like to use the map book and sometimes explore new areas as well, looking for new stretches, especially as it's gotten a little more crowded with COVID, with more people fishing. I explore new areas. Sometimes I feel like going on a tiny little stream. I went and explored, I think it was Spring Creek, and found some beautiful brook trout in there. And it comes in just below Lanesboro, but you have to take some back roads to get there. I drive a lot of gravel roads in exploring. other main places, I do like Mill Creek and Chatfield. It's often a little easier to cast for new people because they have cows in there that keep the grass down.
Oh,
Yeah, so sometimes that's good. Camp Creek, I think that stream is catch and release only, but the bike trail follows it between Preston and Harmony. And there's a couple roads that cross it. But that's, I think it's either a slot limit or catch and release. But again, the DNR map book will tell you that. And they post signs for that. So, they're really good about posting signs about things like that. The map book doesn't really carry the fishing regulations, but just the trout fishing regulations, and maybe not even all of those, because those change sometimes between map book publishing.
and what do when you're traveling down a dirt road? You said you kind of travel down some dirt roads looking
Yeah.
for a really good spot. What exactly are you specifically looking for when you travel down a dirt road to pull over?
I look for rocks. I prefer streams that tumble over rocks and do a lot more wiggling back and forth. I'm not as fond of the high bank grassy streams. So that's what I'm looking for. But often when you cross at a bridge, there's a big hole there and you can't see really what the stream is like. So you need to walk up the easement to give it a good look. And I was going to say, one of the other books I've used is Bob Trevis's book. He has a book out that's based on the DNR map book, but he talks a little more detail about what the streams are like and how to find where those streams are in Minnesota.
Very cool. And you also, do a lot of volunteering and mentoring of women in fly fishing.
Yes, I do. That's why I was in Whitewater this weekend. We had a women's event for camping through the Fly Fishing Women of Minnesota.
And, can you kind of describe what Fly Fishing Minnesota, Fly Fishing Women of Minnesota, what they are and what they do, if other ladies are interested in joining?
Yeah, so it is a nonprofit organization, social club that has a variety of events throughout the year. Things like casting events where you can work on your casting or even beginning to cast. They do, they've done camping trips. We've done weekends into Wisconsin to fish that area. Let's see. So they, I can't think of all the things they do. There's sort of a progression. And what I found with women is they can't always dedicate themselves to learning something. And so by presenting some of the same classes every year or some of the same events, it's hard for me to describe because of COVID and we had to drop a number of the things that we do, but we'll be picking them up again. We call it one-on-one, where we pair a new angler with a mentor for the day out on the water. And that happens just a couple times a year. But the idea being that you can, keep coming back to these classes or these social events and find others to fish with. And getting out more with somebody is a good way to learn fly fishing, or learn where to fish.
Absolutely. And there has been a significant rise in women participating in fly fishing.
Yes, it really has.
And a lot of outdoor recreation activities. But fly fishing, I have noticed just within the state of Minnesota, there's a lot of ladies joining the fly fishing festivities, which is excellent. And, just being out there myself, I can say it's probably one of the most relaxing activities you can do. Even compared to hiking or whatever it is, there's something about that casting of a fly rod that really just puts you in the zen mode.
Yeah. And I think, it's funny because you really have to concentrate in order to set the hook on a trout. It's just a hesitation. And if you miss it, so I think that kind of concentration is like meditation for me, and listening to the brook and listening to the birds at the same time.
I agree. I think, yeah, definitely has something to do with the flowing water, and also the dialed in focus. They call that the state of flow.
Yes,
And
yes.
yes, just as surfers can get into the state of flow with their dialed in focus, fly fishing absolutely does the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, Monta, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. And where can people find you if they want to, take some of your classes, or where can they find the Driftless Fly Fishing Company?
The Driftless Fly Fishing Company is located in Preston, Minnesota. And you can find us on the web, though I've been working on my brother to update his website. I shouldn't say that out loud, but trying to. And you can.
And what's the website for Driftless Fly Fishing Company?
Usually I just search Driftless Fly Fishing Company, but I think it's Minnesota Fly Fishing is the website.
Perfect. Here,
sorry.
No, that's okay.
I don't have it memorized.
You're like, it's my brother. It's like your second home.
Yeah,
it is.
I don't want people to be confused. The Driftless Fly Fishing Company is in Minnesota. There is a Driftless Angler in Wisconsin. Just to confuse things.
Well,
Yeah.
your website, your brother's website, is minnesotaflyfishing.com.
Yep.
So if you are looking for guided fly fishing, if you want Monta to take you out on the water for the day, you also, which I think is really cool, if you want to go fly fishing out on your own, you actually offer canoe and kayak rentals.
We do. And it's a way to get to parts of the stream that are not crowded at all.
Yes.
And don't get fished much.
You got to find those secret little spots. And then if anybody wants to just find you on social media, or reach out to you if they have questions on fly fishing in general, or fly fishing women in Minnesota, how can they find you specifically?
I'm located on Facebook under Monta Hayner, and I'm on Instagram under Monta in Nature. People, fly fishing women in Minnesota can forward information to me. But I'm not part of that board anymore. I was on the board for a number of years, but I still do events with them.
Awesome.
So I'm still teaching with them. I'm also working now with Fly Fishers International Women's Connect that are trying to get more women into fly fishing as well. And we'll be having some events in June. That's going to be Women's Fly Fishing Month with Fly Fishers International.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'll definitely check that event out. That sounds fantastic. Well, Monta, thank you so much for joining the Minnesota Bound podcast and sharing your expertise on not only fly fishing, but some of the great spots in Minnesota and our healthy trout streams that we have, and of course all that you do to mentor others in the world of fly fishing. We appreciate that, because I also know you do some mentoring with kids as well, which is fantastic.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'll be doing some work in Chatfield through the company, and then I'm working with my local park as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and I hope to catch up with you again this summer to do a little bit more fly fishing.
Well, that would be great. Well, thanks for having me on. This has been enjoyable.
Also, thanks again to Voyager Saunas for joining the Minnesota Bound podcast, as well as Connecticut, Minnesota DNR, Minnesota Propane, and Oreo and Ritz. And last but not least, make sure you introduce a kid to the great outdoors.